Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart-stopping drama, hidden secrets, and explosive confrontations of your favorite daytime series. Today is a beautiful day to unravel the complex web of loyalties and betrayals that keep us all on the edge of our seats. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let us explore the profound emotional landscapes and shocking twists that are currently shaking the very foundations of our beloved characters' lives. The intricate and deeply layered history between Jack Abbott and Nikki Newman is a tapestry woven with decades of profound affection, shattering heartbreak, and an undeniable magnetic pull that refuses to be extinguished by time or circumstance. In the labyrinthine world of Genoa City, where loyalties shift like the wind and corporate warfare often bleeds into personal vendettas, the connection between the Abbott patriarch and the Newman matriarch remains one of the most enduring and complicated dynamics. Despite the countless marriages, the bitter family feuds, and the devastating betrayals that have defined their respective lives, there exists a sanctuary of mutual understanding between them. It is a bond forged in the fires of shared survival, a silent acknowledgement of the pain they have both endured at the hands of the very people they love the most. For Jack, Nikki has always been the elusive phantom of his heart, a woman whose grace and resilience have continually captivated him, even when she was firmly entrenched behind the impenetrable fortress of the Newman Empire. Recently, both Jack and Nikki have emerged from the darkest, most terrifying chapters of their lives, carrying physical and psychological scars that serve as constant reminders of their mortality. Jack miraculously survived a brutal, near-fatal stabbing at the hands of a deranged Paddy Williams, an orchestrated attack that pushed him to the absolute brink of death and left him grappling with a profound sense of vulnerability. Simultaneously, Nikki endured the suffocating terror of severe vision loss, a terrifying period of absolute darkness where her independence was stripped away, leaving her entirely at the mercy of her fiercely controlling husband. The shared trauma of these harrowing experiences has only deepened the unspoken tether between them. They are two survivors, battered by the cruel machinations of their enemies, yet somehow finding the strength to stand tall in the aftermath. This mutual understanding of near-total destruction creates an emotional intimacy that transcends any conventional friendship, pulling them toward one another in moments when the weight of their respective worlds becomes too heavy to bear alone. The atmosphere is thick with unspoken tension as Jack Abbott deliberately approaches a quiet, seemingly private moment between Nikki and her daughter, Victoria Newman. The air crackles with an immediate, palpable shift the moment Jack's presence is registered. Jack, carrying the physical stiffness of a man still healing from a catastrophic wound, moves with a deliberate gentleness, his eyes entirely locked onto Nikki. Victoria, ever the astute observer of her family's complex emotional landscape, instantly recognizes the profound, underlying current of intimacy that flows between her mother and the Abbott patriarch. She sees the subtle softening of Nikki's posture, the immediate spark of genuine warmth that illuminates her features, a stark contrast to the guarded elegance she typically maintains. Understanding the deeply personal nature of their connection, and perhaps harboring her own complex web of guilt and distraction regarding her secret alliance with Kyle Abbott, Victoria makes a swift, calculated decision. She gracefully excuses herself, silently stepping away to afford them the privacy they so clearly desire, yet leaving behind an unspoken warning about the dangers of their proximity. As Victoria retreats into the background, her mind races with the terrifying implications of leaving Jack and Nikki alone, especially within the suffocating, omnipresent domain of her father. Victoria is acutely aware of the deeply irrational, historically volatile jealousy that Victor Newman harbors toward Jack Abbott. She knows that in her father's eyes, any interaction between his wife and his eternal rival is viewed not as a harmless conversation between old friends, but as a direct, personal assault on his patriarchal authority. Victoria feels a cold knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach as she walks away, silently praying that this innocent encounter does not ignite the explosive wrath of the Newman patriarch. She is already drowning in her own treacherous secrets, terrified of the catastrophic fallout should her illicit romance and corporate espionage with Kyle be fully exposed to her father. The last thing her fractured family needs is another violent eruption of Victor's possessive rage, yet she cannot bring herself to intervene, allowing the magnetic pull between Jack and Nikki to run its dangerous course. Left entirely alone in the quiet solitude of the moment, Jack and Nikki share a profound, emotionally charged celebration of light and life. Jack studies Nikki's face with a reverence that borders on devotion, his eyes tracing the familiar contours of her features as he searches for the undeniable proof of her miraculous recovery. He observes the clarity in her gaze, the return of that fierce, independent spark that had been temporarily extinguished by the terrifying darkness of her blindness. In return, Nikki looks upon Jack with a deep, maternal tenderness mixed with a lingering romantic affection, silently acknowledging the sheer miracle of his survival. She sees the lingering pallor of his near-death experience, the physical toll of the brutal stabbing that nearly robbed the Abbott family of their beloved patriarch. Without a single word spoken, they communicate a universe of relief, a shared gratitude for the simple, profound gift of being alive to witness each other's presence once more. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated vulnerability, a rare instance where the shields of their respective dynasties are completely lowered. Beneath the surface of their mutual relief, a powerful, unspoken romantic tension continues to simmer in Jack's heart. Despite his recent reunion with Diane Jenkins and his desperate attempts to forge a peaceful, stable future, Jack finds himself entirely unable to banish the lingering silhouette of Nikki Newman from his soul. She remains the ultimate unspoken desire of his tumultuous life, a woman whose happiness he prioritizes above his own, even when it causes him immense personal agony. As he stands before her, basking in the warmth of her restored vision, Jack wrestles with the agonizing reality that his feelings for Nikki are not merely relics of the past, but a living, breathing ache that refuses to be silenced. He is acutely aware of the dangerous territory he is navigating, fully understanding that indulging in these emotions is a betrayal of the fragile peace he has constructed with Diane. Yet, in the intoxicating presence of the woman who has always held a fractured piece of his heart, Jack finds his rational defenses crumbling, surrendering to the undeniable, magnetic pull that has defined their tragic, beautiful history. The delicate, intimate atmosphere abruptly shifts, growing suddenly heavy and fraught with tension, as Nikki gently steers the conversation toward the most complicated and painful aspect of her life, which is her marriage to Victor Newman. With a hesitant, almost apologetic demeanor, Nikki reveals the details of her recent, highly private vow renewal ceremony at the Newman Ranch. She meticulously describes the intimate gathering, framing it as a necessary step toward healing and solidifying their fractured family unit after the relentless onslaught of recent traumas. However, the mere mention of Victor's name acts as a chilling gust of wind, instantly extinguishing the warmth that had previously enveloped them. The invisible, suffocating specter of the Newman patriarch suddenly looms over the conversation, casting a long, dark shadow over their shared vulnerability. Nikki's attempt to present a united, peaceful front with Victor feels forced, a desperate attempt to convince herself as much as she is trying to convince Jack, revealing the deep, internal fractures that still plague her supposedly repaired marriage. Jack's reaction to the news of the vow renewal is a visceral, almost physical manifestation of disdain and profound skepticism. A dark cloud immediately passes over his features, his jaw clenching as he struggles to suppress the rising tide of bitter resentment. Jack harbors an absolute, unwavering disbelief in Victor Newman's capacity for genuine peace or unselfish love. He views the vow renewal not as a romantic gesture of healing, but as a calculated, possessive maneuver designed to firmly reassert Victor's absolute control over Nikki. Jack's mind races with the historical evidence of Victor's ruthless manipulation, the decades of psychological warfare that have repeatedly left Nikki broken and isolated. He is entirely unconvinced that the Newman patriarch has suddenly transformed into a benevolent, forgiving husband. Furthermore, Jack carries the heavy, intuitive suspicion that Victor is somehow deeply entangled in the recent horrors that have plagued their lives, making the idea of Nikki willingly binding herself closer to such a dangerous, manipulative force entirely repulsive to his protective instincts. What Jack does not know, and what Nikki desperately conceals behind her composed exterior, is the agonizing psychological warfare she is currently waging within the walls of her own home. While she speaks of reconciliation and renewed vows, Nikki's internal reality is a terrifying landscape of suspicion and deceit. During the terrifying weeks of her blindness, she had utilized her vulnerability as a perfect, impenetrable cover, secretly investigating Victor's private documents and listening to his classified conversations. She carries the horrific, suffocating burden of knowing that her husband is likely the architect behind Jack's brutal stabbing and Diane's terrifying kidnapping. As she looks into Jack's eyes, accepting his warmth and concern, Nikki is drowning in an ocean of guilt. She is actively protecting the very man who orchestrated the near-fatal attack on the man standing before her. This agonizing duality of playing the role of the devoted, newly committed wife, while secretly hunting for evidence to destroy her husband's empire, is tearing Nikki apart from the inside out, making her conversation with Jack a torturous exercise in emotional endurance. Despite the raging inferno of skepticism and protective anger burning within his chest, Jack forces himself to swallow his bitter pride for the sake of Nikki's fragile emotional state. He recognizes the desperate plea for validation in her eyes, the silent request for him not to shatter the delicate illusion of peace she is trying so desperately to maintain. With a monumental effort of will, Jack attempts to mask his profound unhappiness, offering a strained, reluctant acceptance of her decision to heal her marriage. He carefully chooses his words, prioritizing her happiness and stability over his own deep-seated hatred for her husband. Jack assures her that if this reconciliation truly brings her peace, then he will support her choice, even if it physically pains him to watch her willingly walk back into the gilded cage of the Newman Ranch. It is a heartbreaking display of selfless devotion, a man willingly suppressing his own protective instincts and romantic longing to provide the woman he loves with the emotional sanctuary she so desperately seeks, regardless of the personal cost. Yet, in the treacherous, hyper-vigilant world of Genoa City, no intimate moment shared between Jack Abbott and Nikki Newman can ever remain truly hidden from the omnipresent gaze of the Newman patriarch. As Jack and Nikki stand close together, their body language radiating a deep, undeniable emotional intimacy, the narrative focus shifts to the dark, encroaching shadows at the periphery of their sanctuary. The suffocating, absolute control that Victor Newman exerts over his environment is a palpable, terrifying force. Victor has always viewed his wife not merely as a partner, but as his ultimate possession, a prize that must be fiercely guarded against any perceived threat. His historical, deeply irrational jealousy regarding Jack Abbott is a toxic, highly combustible element, a dormant volcano that requires only the slightest provocation to erupt into catastrophic violence. The very existence of this private, emotionally charged conversation is a direct violation of Victor's unspoken laws, a dangerous flirtation with the most destructive forces in their interconnected lives. The tension escalates to unbearable heights as the imposing, unmistakable silhouette of Victor Newman materializes from the shadows, silently observing the deeply intimate interaction from a concealed vantage point. Victor's cold, calculating eyes lock onto the undeniable closeness between his newly recommitted wife and his oldest, most despised enemy. He watches the way Jack leans in, the tenderness in his posture, the soft, unguarded expression on Nikki's face, an expression she rarely shares with her own husband. In Victor's deeply paranoid and fiercely possessive mind, this innocent celebration of shared survival is instantly twisted into a grotesque betrayal. He does not see two old friends finding solace in the aftermath of trauma. He sees a blatant, disrespectful challenge to his authority and a direct threat to his marriage. The toxic brew of absolute possessiveness, deeply rooted insecurity, and unyielding rage begins to boil within the Newman patriarch, transforming his initial curiosity into a cold, calculated fury that threatens to consume everything in its path. This devastating misunderstanding holds the terrifying potential to ignite a catastrophic new war that could completely decimate the fragile peace of Genoa City. Victor's jealousy is not a passive emotion, it is a highly destructive, weaponized force that has historically ruined lives, shattered corporations, and torn families apart. As he stands in the shadows, his mind rapidly constructing a narrative of deceit and romantic betrayal, Victor is already calculating his ruthless retaliation. He views Jack's presence not as a gesture of friendship, but as a deliberate, calculated invasion of his territory, a blatant attempt to steal the woman Victor has just bound to himself with renewed vows. The danger of this moment cannot be overstated. Victor, already riding high on the absolute power of orchestrating Billy Abbott's legal destruction, is now primed to unleash an even more devastating, deeply personal vengeance upon the Abbott patriarch. The innocent, healing connection between Jack and Nikki is rapidly mutating into the very catalyst that will unleash hell upon them all. The scene hangs suspended in a terrifying, breathless moment of impending doom. Jack and Nikki remain entirely oblivious to the dark, suffocating shadow that has fallen over their fragile sanctuary, their quiet smiles masking the catastrophic storm that is about to break. Victor Newman stands silently in the periphery, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with a cold, unyielding promise of absolute destruction. The air grows heavy with the unspoken certainty of a devastating retaliation, leaving a chilling question hanging over the fractured landscape of Genoa City. Will this innocent, desperately needed moment of shared survival become the deadly spark that ignites a brutal, inescapable war between the two most powerful dynasties? As Victor slowly steps out of the shadows, his presence a dark omen of the chaos to come. The fate of Jack, Nikki, and everyone they love rests entirely on the edge of a knife, leaving viewers desperately holding their breath for the inevitable, explosive fallout.